The great hall of the Velen flagship was the most beautiful place T-Sung had ever seen. Tall pillars of white stone reached up to a ceiling covered in tiny lights that looked like stars. The floor was smooth like glass, and it reflected everything above it. Hundreds of Velen nobles stood in perfect rows, their silver skin shining under the gentle light. They wore long robes of purple and gold, and they watched the human soldier with curious eyes. T-Sung felt very small in this place. He was just a sergeant from Earth, a simple man from a farming village in Korea. His uniform was still dirty from battle. There was dried blood on his sleeve, and his boots left marks on the perfect floor. But he stood straight and kept his face calm. His grandmother had taught him that a man should never look afraid, even when his heart was beating fast. The High Commander of the Velen Empire stepped forward. He was tall, almost 3 meters, with skin that glowed like moonlight. His eyes were large and completely black, and when he spoke, his voice filled the entire hall. "Human soldier," the High Commander said, "3 days ago you did something impossible. When our enemies broke through the defense line, you stood alone in the corridor of Section 7. You held that position for 6 hours. You killed 47 enemy soldiers with nothing but your rifle and your hands. Because of you, the crown prince of our empire still lives." The nobles made soft sounds of approval. T-Sung said nothing. He remembered that corridor very well. He remembered the fear, the pain, the moment when he thought he would die. But he also remembered the young Velen prince hiding behind him, crying and shaking. T-Sung had made a promise to protect him, and he kept that promise. "For this act of courage," the High Commander continued, "we give you our highest honor. You may choose a companion from the bonded caste. She will serve you, protect you, and stay with you until your last day. This is our gift to you, human. Choose wisely." A door opened on the side of the hall, and 12 Velen women walked in. They moved like water, smooth and graceful. Each one was tall and thin, with silver skin that seemed to glow from inside. Their faces were perfect, their eyes were bright, and their long hair floated behind them like silk in the wind. They wore white dresses that showed their elegant figures, and they smiled at T-Sung with practiced charm. The nobles watched with great interest. Many of them whispered to each other, pointing at the most beautiful women. They expected the human to be impressed. How could he not be? These were the finest women of the bonded caste, raised from birth to be perfect companions. But T-Sung was looking at something else. In the back corner of the hall, almost hidden behind a pillar, stood a 13th woman. She was shorter than the others, and her body was round instead of thin. Her skin was not shining silver but dull gray, like old metal that had lost its polish. Her hair was shorter and less elegant, and her dress was plain compared to the others. She kept her eyes on the floor, and her shoulders were bent forward as if she was trying to make herself smaller. Nobody was looking at her. The nobles acted like she did not exist. Even the other Velen women seemed to pretend she was not there. The High Commander gestured toward the 12 beautiful women. "These are the finest of the bonded caste," he said proudly. "Each one has been trained in music, art, combat, and healing. Each one is a perfect example of Velen beauty. Please take your time, look at them, talk to them if you wish. Then make your choice." T-Sung nodded slowly. He looked at the 12 women one by one. They smiled at him, some shyly, some boldly. They were indeed beautiful by any standard, but something bothered him. Their smiles seemed empty, like masks worn for show. Their eyes looked at him but did not really see him. They saw only the honor of being chosen, the status it would bring. He thought of his grandmother again. She had been a short woman, round and weathered from years of farm work. City people called her ugly. They laughed at her rough hands and simple clothes. But when the great drought came and the crops died, she was the one who saved the village. She had stored food when others wasted it. She had worked when others rested. She had kept people alive with her own hands. "Beauty fades," she used to say, "but a good heart keeps you warm through winter." T-Sung started walking. The nobles watched with eager eyes, waiting to see which beauty he would choose. But he walked past the first woman, then the second, then the third. He walked past all 12 of them without stopping. The hall became very quiet. People looked at each other in confusion. T-Sung walked to the back corner, to the pillar where the 13th woman was hiding. She looked up when his shadow fell over her, and he saw fear in her gray eyes. Real fear, not performance. She thought he was coming to mock her. "What is your name?" T-Sung asked softly. The woman's mouth opened, but no sound came out. She looked around, sure that this was some kind of trick. "My name is Bomi," she finally whispered. Her voice was rough, as if she did not use it often. T-Sung turned to face the High Commander. Every eye in the hall was on him now. The nobles were frozen in shock. The 12 beautiful women stared with open mouths. "Her," T-Sung said clearly, "I choose her." For a long moment nobody moved. Nobody breathed. The silence was so heavy that T-Sung could hear his own heartbeat. Then the whispers started. They spread through the hall like fire through dry grass. The nobles pointed and talked behind their hands. Some laughed in disbelief. Others looked offended, as if T-Sung had insulted them personally. The High Commander's black eyes narrowed. "Human," he said slowly, "perhaps you do not understand. The woman you have chosen is defective. Her body is wrong. Her skin does not shine. She has no value by our standards. She is in the bonded caste only because we could not simply throw her away. Surely you want to reconsider." T-Sung looked at Bomi. She was shaking now, her eyes wet with tears that she was trying very hard not to let fall. She expected him to change his mind. She expected him to laugh and walk away. This had probably happened to her before. "I do not want to reconsider," T-Sung said. "My choice is made." The High Commander studied him for a long moment. Then he waved his hand in a gesture that seemed almost angry. "Very well. The human has chosen. Let it be recorded. The bonding ceremony will take place tomorrow. This gathering is finished." The nobles began to leave, still whispering and laughing. The 12 beautiful women were led away, and T-Sung could see confusion and relief mixed on their faces. They did not have to serve a strange human after all. Soon, only T-Sung and Bomi remained in the great hall. The lights above them flickered slightly, and the false stars seemed less bright than before. Bomi was still looking at the floor. Her tears had finally fallen, making wet lines down her gray cheeks. "Why?" she asked in a broken voice. "Why did you choose me? Is this a game, a way to punish me for something I do not understand?" T-Sung reached out and gently lifted her chin so she would look at him. Her gray eyes met his, and he saw years of pain there. Years of being ignored, mocked, and treated as worthless. "It is not a game," he said, "and I do not want to punish you. I chose you because when I looked at those other women, I saw only empty beauty. But when I looked at you, I saw something real. I saw someone who has survived, someone who has suffered but has not broken, someone with a story that deserves to be heard." Bomi stared at him. She did not seem to believe his words. How could she? Her entire life had taught her that she was nothing. "You are strange," she said finally. "Humans are very strange." T-Sung smiled. It was the first real smile he had made since the battle. "Yes," he agreed. "We are. Come, let me take you somewhere warm. You look cold, and I think we have much to talk about." He offered her his hand. Bomi looked at it for a long moment, as if it was a trap that might close on her at any second. Then, slowly, carefully, she placed her gray hand in his. It was the first time anyone had touched her with kindness in a very, very long time. Together, they walked out of the great hall, leaving the whispers and the judgment behind. Neither of them knew what the future would bring. But for the first time in her life, Bomi felt something that she had forgotten how to feel. She felt hope. The room they gave T-Sung was small but comfortable. It had a bed that was too big for one person, a window that showed the stars outside, and a small kitchen area in the corner. The walls were plain white and the furniture was simple. It was not fancy like the Great Hall, but T-Sung liked it better. It felt more honest. Bomi stood near the door, not moving. She kept her head down and her hands folded in front of her. Her body was stiff, like she was waiting to be told what to do. This was how she had been trained. Stand. Wait. Obey. Do not speak unless spoken to. T-Sung sat down on a chair and looked at her for a moment. The silence between them was heavy and uncomfortable. "You can sit down," he said. "There is another chair right there. You do not have to stand." Bomi did not move. "It is not proper," she said quietly. "A bonded companion should not sit with her master. She should wait until she is needed." T-Sung let out a long breath. He ran his hand through his short black hair and shook his head. "I am not your master," he said. "I do not want a servant. Please just sit down. My neck hurts from looking up at you." Bomi hesitated. Her gray eyes moved from the chair to T-Sung and back again. Finally, slowly, she walked over and sat on the very edge of the seat. She looked ready to jump up and run at any moment. "Better," T-Sung said. He leaned back in his chair and crossed his arms. "Now tell me about yourself. Who is Bomi? Where do you come from? What is your story?" Bomi's mouth opened and closed several times. Nobody had ever asked her these questions before. In her entire life, nobody had cared enough to ask. She did not know where to begin. "There is nothing to tell," she finally said. "I am nobody, I am defective, that is all." "That is not all," T-Sung said firmly. "That is what others have told you, but I want to know the truth. I want to know you." Bomi looked at him with something like confusion in her eyes. Then, slowly, she began to speak. "I was born during the Great Famine," she said. "It was a terrible time for my people. The crops failed on 12 colony worlds. Millions died. My mother was pregnant with me during the worst of it. She did not have enough food. She was sick and weak. The doctors said I would not survive." She paused, her gray hands gripping each other tightly. "But I did survive. My body changed. It became different. It stored everything it could. Every bit of energy, every drop of nutrition. My cells became like storage containers. That is why I look like this. My body learned to hold on to everything because there was a time when there was nothing." T-Sung listened quietly. He did not interrupt. "When I was born," Bomi continued, "the doctors were shocked. I was not thin and elegant like a proper Velen baby. I was round and gray. My skin did not shine. My parents were ashamed. They gave me to the state when I was 3 years old." Her voice became even softer. "The state put me in the bonded caste. It was the only place for someone like me, but even there I was the lowest of the low. The other girls mocked me. The trainers ignored me. When ceremonies came and companions were chosen, I was always left behind. Sometimes men would choose me as a joke. They would laugh and then pick someone else. After a while, I stopped hopping." She looked up at T-Sung and there was a question in her eyes. "That is why I do not understand you. Why did you truly choose me? Was it pity? Is that it? Do you feel sorry for me?" T-Sung was silent for a long moment. Then he stood up and walked to the window. The stars outside were bright and endless. "When I was a child," he said, "I lived in a small village in Korea. That is a country on Earth. My parents died when I was 5 years old. A sickness took them. After that, my grandmother raised me. Her name was Sunoke, but everyone called her Halmionai. It means grandmother." He turned to look at Bomi. She was short and round. Her hands were rough from farm work. Her face had many lines from years of sun and wind. City people thought she was ugly. They called her names when she went to sell vegetables at the market. They laughed at her old clothes and her simple way of speaking. Bomi was watching him now, really watching him. There was something new in her eyes, interest maybe, or recognition. "But my grandmother was the strongest person I ever knew," T-Sung said. "When the great drought came, the crops died. Other families had nothing. They began to starve. But Hal Mionai had saved food. For years she had put away a little bit here and there. Rice, dried vegetables, preserved meat. People called her crazy for doing this. They said she was wasting money. He smiled at the memory. When the drought lasted for 3 years, those people came to her door. They were hungry and desperate. And do you know what she did? She fed them, every single one. She gave away everything she had saved, even when it meant she herself went hungry. She kept our village alive. He walked back to where Bomi was sitting and knelt down so their eyes were level. She taught me that real beauty has nothing to do with how a person looks. Real beauty is in what a person does, how they treat others, and what they carry in their heart. She said to me, T-Sung, when you look for a partner in life, do not look at the face. Look at the hands. See if they know how to work. See if they know how to give. Bomi's gray eyes were wet now. Tears rolled down her cheeks, but she did not try to hide them. When I looked at those 12 beautiful women in the hall, T-Sung said, I saw empty faces. I saw people who had never suffered, never struggled, never had to fight for anything. But when I looked at you, I saw a survivor. I saw someone whose body had learned to protect itself against hard times. I saw strength, not weakness. That is why I chose you. Bomi began to cry in a way she had not cried since she was a small child. Great sobs shook her round body, and she covered her face with her hands. Years of pain and loneliness came pouring out of her like water breaking through a dam. T-Sung did not try to stop her. He simply sat beside her and waited. Sometimes, the kindest thing you can do for someone is to let them feel their pain. When her crying finally slowed, Bomi looked up at him with red eyes. You are not like other people, she said. Human or Velen, you see things differently. Maybe, T-Sung said. Or maybe I just remember where I came from. When you grow up with nothing, you learn what truly matters. Bomi wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. For the first time since she could remember, she did not feel ashamed of her body. She did not feel the need to hide. The other Velens will never accept your choice, she said. They will mock you. They will say you are a fool. Your reputation will suffer. T-Sung shrugged. I did not come to space to make Velens happy. I came because Earth needed soldiers to fight in this war. I did my duty. I saved the prince. If they do not like my choice, that is their problem, not mine. A small sound came from Bomi. It took T-Sung a moment to realize what it was. She was laughing. It was a soft, uncertain laugh, like she had forgotten how to do it, but it was real. You really are strange, she said again, but this time it sounded like a compliment. T-Sung smiled. Are you hungry? I can make some food. Human food, but you might like it. Have you ever had rice? Bomi shook her head. What is rice? It is what my grandmother used to save in her storage room, T-Sung said. Small white grains, very simple, very plain, but it can keep you alive when nothing else can. Come, I will show you. He went to the small kitchen and began to prepare a simple meal. Bomi watched him work, fascinated by the way he moved. No Velen man would ever cook for himself. It was considered beneath them, but T-Sung did not seem to care about such things. As the smell of cooking rice filled the small room, something changed in the air between them. The heaviness was lifting. The distance was closing. They were two people from different worlds, different species, different lives. But they had both known suffering. They had both known loneliness. And somehow, in this small room floating among the stars, they had found each other. Bomi did not know what the future would bring. She did not know if she could trust this strange human man who had turned her world upside down. But for the first time in her life, she wanted to try. She wanted to believe that maybe, just maybe, she was worth something after all. The rice was ready. T-Sung put it in 2 bowls and handed one to Bomi. Their hands touched for a moment, gray skin against brown skin, and neither of them pulled away. To new beginnings, T-Sung said, raising his bowl slightly. Bomi did not know what to say, so she simply nodded and took her first bite of rice. It was warm, it was simple, it was good. Just like hope. 3 months had passed since the reward ceremony. T-Sung had returned to active duty on the patrol ship called the Iron Wake. It was a medium-sized vessel with a crew of 40 humans and a mission to protect the trade routes between Earth and Velan space. Bomi came with him, as was her right as his bonded companion. At first, the human crew did not know what to make of her. They had never seen a Velan who looked like Bomi before. All the Velans they knew were tall and silver and beautiful in a cold, distant way. Bomi was different. She was short and round and gray, and she moved carefully, like someone who expected to be pushed away at any moment. But humans, T-Sung had noticed, were not like Velans in this way. They did not care so much about beauty. They cared about actions, and Bomi's actions spoke louder than any appearance. It started in the ship's small garden room. Every patrol ship had one. It was a place where plants grew under artificial lights, providing fresh air and a little bit of food for long missions. But the Iron Wake's garden had always been poor. The plants were thin and yellow, and they barely produced anything. Bomi asked T-Sung if she could work there. He said yes, not expecting much. He thought she was just looking for something to do, a way to feel useful. A month later, the garden was transformed. The plants were thick and green, heavy with fruits and vegetables that the crew had never seen before. Flowers bloomed in colors so bright they hurt the eyes. The air in that room was fresh and sweet, better than any air recycler could provide. The crew started calling her Garden Lady. They would visit her while she worked, bringing her cups of coffee and pieces of chocolate. They would sit among the plants and talk to her about their homes, their families, their dreams. Bomi listened to every story and remembered every name. She learned that Corporal Yeho had a daughter back on Earth who was learning to play piano. She learned that Private Sungwoo was saving money to buy a small restaurant after his service ended. She learned that Hana, the medic, had lost her brother in the war and still cried for him every night. In return, the crew learned about Bomi. They learned that she had a gentle laugh that came out only when she was truly happy. They learned that she hummed old Velan songs while she worked, songs so ancient that even most Velans had forgotten them. They learned that she had a fear of small spaces because she had been locked in a closet as a child by cruel trainers. Without anyone planning it, Bomi became part of the family. But not everyone was happy about this. T-Sung first noticed the watchers at a supply station called Gamma Point 7. There were two Velan diplomats there, dressed in official robes, supposedly checking on the trade agreements. But their eyes kept moving to Bomi. They watched her when she walked through the station. They took notes on their small devices. When T-Sung looked at them directly, they turned away too quickly. He said nothing at first. Maybe he was imagining things. Maybe they were just curious about the strange human who had chosen an ugly companion. But then the accident started. A food package that was delivered to Bomi's room turned out to be poisoned. She did not eat it only because she thought it smelled wrong. Tests showed it contained a chemical that was harmless to humans but deadly to Velans. A week later, a section of the ship lost power while Bomi was there alone. The doors locked, and the oxygen began to drain from the room. She survived only because Sungwoo happened to be passing by and heard her screaming. He broke the door down with his bare hands. Then a message arrived on T-Sung's personal device. It was anonymous, untraceable, and very short. "Give her back to us, human. She does not belong with you. Give her back or you will both die." T-Sung showed the message to Captain Yonggi, a serious man with gray hair and sharp eyes. The captain listened to everything and then sat in silence for a long time. "Someone powerful wants her dead," the captain finally said. "The Velan government, maybe, or someone close to it. The question is why. She is just a bonded companion. Why would anyone care this much about one defective woman?" T-Sung did not know the answer, but he knew someone who might. That night he found Bomi in the garden as usual. She was sitting among the flowers, her gray hands gently touching the petals of a blue rose. The lights were dim and she looked almost peaceful. But when she heard him coming, fear flashed in her eyes. You know why they want to kill you, T-Sung said. It was not a question. Bomi was silent for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. Yes, I know. She stood up slowly and turned to face him. There was something different about her in that moment. Something old and heavy, like she was carrying a weight that had been pressing on her for her entire life. Do you know what the Velens used to be thousands of years ago? She asked. Before the Empire, before the beauty standards and the castes and the rules. T-Sung shook his head. We were wanderers, Bomi said. We traveled between stars in great ships, living off the energy of space itself. We could take the light of suns and the power of nebulas and store it in our bodies. We were living batteries, walking power sources. This energy, we called it ether. It was part of us. It made us strong, made us live for hundreds of years, made us able to survive anywhere. She paused and her gray eyes began to glow slightly, just a little like embers in dying fire. But over time, our leaders became obsessed with beauty. They believed that shining silver skin and tall, thin bodies were signs of civilization, signs of being better than other species. They started choosing partners based on looks instead of ability. Generation after generation, they bred out the ones who could store ether. They called them ugly. They called them defective. T-Sung was beginning to understand. You can still do it, he said. You can still store this ether. Bomi nodded. My body is not defective. It is old. It is what Velens were supposed to be before we forgot ourselves. I am what they call a keeper. My cells can hold more ether than a power reactor. The energy from a small star stored inside me. That is why my skin is gray instead of silver. The ether changes how light reflects off me. She moved her hand and a small ball of pale light appeared above her palm. It floated there for a moment, beautiful and terrible, before fading away. The rulers of the Velen Empire have known about people like me for centuries. They find us when we are young and they hide us away, or they kill us. Because if the common people learned the truth, everything would change. They would know that the beautiful ones are actually weaker. They would know that the social order is built on a lie. T-Sung felt cold anger rising in his chest. So they sent assassins after you, because you are proof that their entire system is wrong. Yes, Bomi said. When you chose me in front of all those nobles, you made a mistake without knowing it. You drew attention to me. You made people ask questions. The elite cannot allow that. They will not stop until I am dead. She looked at him with eyes that were suddenly very tired. I should have told you before. I am sorry. If you want to send me away, I will understand. I do not want you or your crew to die because of me. T-Sung stepped forward and took her hands in his. The ball of light had left her fingers warm, almost hot, but he did not let go. Listen to me carefully, he said. I did not choose you by accident. I did not choose you because I felt sorry for you. I chose you because I saw something in you that was worth more than all the silver skin in the galaxy. And I am not going to let anyone take you away. Not the Velen elite. Not the Empire. Not anyone. Bomi stared at him. Tears began to form in her glowing eyes. You are not just some defective outcast, T-Sung continued. You are a keeper. You are a piece of living history. You are proof that your people can be more than what they have become. And I think maybe, just maybe, that is exactly what the universe needs right now. He let go of her hands and stood straight. The soldier in him was awake now, planning, preparing. Tomorrow we tell the crew everything. They deserve to know what they are protecting. Then we make a plan. If the elite want to fight, we will give them one. Bomi wiped her eyes. For the first time since he had known her, she smiled in a way that showed all her teeth. It was not a pretty smile by any standard, human or Velan, but it was real and fierce and full of something that had been sleeping inside her for a very long time. Humans really are strange, she said. You find a woman full of enough energy to destroy a city, and your first thought is to protect her. T-Sung grinned back at her. What can I say? We like a challenge. In the garden room of the Iron Wake, surrounded by flowers that grew stronger than they should, two people from different worlds made a silent promise to each other. They would stand together. They would fight together. And they would not fall. Station Myra was an old place at the edge of Velan space. It was not beautiful or important. The metal walls were rusted, the lights flickered constantly, and the air always smelled a little bit like old oil. About 3,000 people lived there, mostly refugees from the war, traders who could not afford better ports, and workers who had nowhere else to go. The galaxy had forgotten about Station Myra, and the people who lived there had learned to survive on very little. This was where the Iron Wake stopped to repair a damaged engine. Captain Yongi said it would take 3 days. 3 quiet days in a forgotten corner of space. Nothing to worry about. He was wrong. T-Sung saw the ships first. He was standing near a window in the station's market area, watching Bomi buy strange alien fruits from a vendor. She was smiling at the vendor's child, a small creature with too many eyes and not enough legs. The child was showing her a toy, and Bomi was pretending to be very impressed. Then T-Sung looked up at the stars and saw death coming. 12 ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the same moment. They were Velan military vessels, but they carried no official markings. Their hulls were painted black, and their weapons were already glowing with power. Elite kill ships, the kind used for operations that were never recorded. T-Sung grabbed Bomi's hand. "We need to go now." The station's alarms began to scream. What happened next was chaos. The black ships surrounded Station Myra and cut off all escape routes. They sent a message on all channels, cold and clear. "Give us the gray woman and the human soldier. Everyone else may leave. You have 1 hour." But the station's people did not leave. They could not. The docking bays were already locked down by Velan soldiers who had been hiding among the merchants. There was nowhere to go. Captain Yongi gathered the crew of the Iron Wake in a storage room deep inside the station. 40 humans, armed with whatever they could find. Yiho had his rifle and 2 pistols. Sungwoo had found a heavy machine gun that he should not have been able to carry, but he carried it anyway. Hana had her medical bag and a knife she knew how to use. 20 ships worth of soldiers against 40 of us, the captain said. His voice was calm, but his eyes were not. "Those are bad numbers." "We cannot let them take Bomi," T-Sung said. "If they do, she dies, and everyone who knows the truth about the Keepers dies with her." The captain nodded slowly. "Then we fight, we buy time. Maybe we can get a message out to Earth Command. Maybe help will come." Nobody in the room believed help would come in time, but nobody said that out loud. The first attack came 30 minutes later. Velan elite soldiers poured through the station's corridors like silver water. They were fast, trained, and completely without mercy. They shot anyone who got in their way, civilian or not. T-Sung and his crew met them at a junction point called Section 4. It was a narrow corridor with heavy doors on both sides, a good place to make a stand. The fighting was brutal. Velan soldiers fell, but humans fell too. Private Kim took a shot to the chest and died in Yiho's arms. Sergeant Park held a doorway alone until a grenade took both his legs. Hana dragged him back and tried to save him, but there was too much blood. For 2 hours the humans held their ground. They fought with everything they had, using tricks and traps and sheer stubborn refusal to die. But slowly, step by step, they were pushed back. Bomi watched from behind the lines. She had wanted to help to fight, but T-Sung had made her promise to stay safe. "You are too important," he had said. "If you die, everything we are fighting for dies with you." She hated that promise. She hated standing still while others bled for her. Every time a human soldier fell, she felt the weight of it on her heart. Then the elite brought in their heavy weapons. A massive cannon was wheeled into the corridor, a device that could tear through metal walls like paper. The human line would not survive a direct hit. Everyone knew it. "Fall back," Captain Yongi shouted. "Everyone fall back." But there was nowhere to fall back to. They were trapped in a dead-end section of the station. Behind them was only a wall. In front of them was death. Balmy made a decision. She stepped past T-Sung before he could stop her. She walked forward, through the line of human soldiers, toward the enemy. Her gray skin began to glow. "Balmy, no!" T-Sung screamed. He tried to run after her, but Yeho held him back. Balmy stood alone in the middle of the corridor. The Velen soldiers saw her and stopped. They knew what she was. They had been sent to kill her specifically. Some of them looked afraid. The commander of the elite forces stepped forward. He was tall and beautiful, with silver skin that shone like mirrors. His black eyes showed no emotion. "Keeper," he said, "you cannot win. You are one. We are hundreds. Come quietly and we will make your death painless." Balmy looked at him. Then she looked back at the humans behind her, at T-Sung, whose face was twisted with fear and love, at the soldiers who had become her family, at Hana, covered in the blood of friends she could not save. "No," Balmy said. Her voice was soft, but somehow it filled the entire corridor. "I will not come quietly. I will not let you hurt these people. They protected me. They loved me when no one else did, and now it is my turn to protect them." She raised her hands. Light began to pour from her skin, bright and terrible. The ether that she had stored inside her body for her entire life was waking up. "I am not defective," Balmy said. "I am a keeper, and I keep what matters." The light exploded outward. It was not an attack. It was a wall, a barrier of pure energy that stretched across the entire corridor, floor to ceiling, wall to wall. The cannon fired, and the blast hit the barrier and dissolved into nothing. Energy weapons fired, and their shots simply vanished into the light. The human soldiers stared in amazement. They had never seen anything like this. The barrier pulsed with colors that did not have names, and it made a sound like distant singing. But Balmy was paying a price. Her body shook with the effort. Her gray skin flickered between dark and light. Blood began to drip from her nose. Holding this much power was tearing her apart from the inside. T-Sung saw it. He broke free from Yeho's grip and ran to her. "You are killing yourself," he shouted. "Stop, let it go." "If I stop, they get through," Balmy said through gritted teeth. "They will kill everyone. Then we fight with what we have left, together, but I will not watch you die alone." He turned to face the human soldiers. They were tired, wounded, and many were dying, but they were still standing. "Listen to me," T-Sung shouted. "She is buying us time. That barrier will not last forever. When it falls, we hit them with everything we have. We make them pay for every centimeter. Are you with me?" Sungwoo raised his heavy gun. "I am with you, Sergeant." Yeho checked his rifle. "To the end." Hana picked up a weapon from a fallen soldier. Her hands were steady. "Let us show these silver devils what humans are made of." One by one, every soldier still able to stand raised their weapon. The barrier began to flicker. Balmy was screaming now, her body burning with power it was never meant to hold this long. The light was fading. "Now," T-Sung shouted. The barrier fell, and the humans attacked. What followed was the kind of battle that songs are written about. 40 humans against hundreds of elite soldiers, fighting in close quarters where numbers meant less than courage. They used knives when guns ran empty. They used fists when knives broke. They dragged each other to safety and went back into the fire again and again. Yeho killed 12 soldiers before a blade took his arm. He kept fighting with one arm until Sungwoo pulled him to cover. Sungwoo himself stood in the center of the corridor, his heavy gun roaring, holding back an entire squad by himself until the gun melted from heat. And T-Sung fought like a demon. He had trained his whole life for moments like this. Every lesson, every exercise, every painful hour had led to this. He moved through the enemy like wind through grass, and wherever he went, silver bodies fell. Slowly, impossibly, the humans began to push back. Then the station's other residents joined the fight. The refugees, the traders, the forgotten people of Station Myra. They came with tools and pipes and anything else they could find. They were not soldiers. They did not know how to fight properly. But they knew that the humans were standing for something good and they wanted to be part of it. The elite commander looked around and saw his forces failing. He saw civilians fighting beside soldiers, saw his perfect warriors being overwhelmed by ragged courage. He gave the order to retreat. As the black ships pulled away from Station Myra, the survivors stood in silence. The corridors were filled with bodies from both sides. The walls were scarred with burns and blood. T-Sung found Bomi lying on the floor where she had fallen. Her gray skin was pale, and her eyes were closed. He held her in his arms and felt for her heartbeat. It was there, weak but there. "You impossible woman," he whispered. "You beautiful, impossible woman." Bomi's eyes opened just a little. "Did we win?" she asked. T-Sung looked around at the survivors. At Yiho, getting his arm bandaged by Hana. At Sungwoo, sitting against a wall and laughing for no reason. At the civilians of Station Myra, helping the wounded and holding each other. "Yes," he said, "we won." Bomi smiled. It was the smile of someone who had finally found a place where she belonged. "Good," she said, and then she slept. Around them, the survivors of Station Myra began to understand what they had witnessed. They had seen a keeper use the old power. They had seen the elite fail. They had seen proof that the lies of the empire could be broken. And they began to talk. 1 year had passed since the battle at Station Myra. In that time, everything had changed. The story of the gray woman who saved 3,000 lives spread faster than anyone expected. Traders carried it from station to station. Refugees whispered it in camps across a dozen worlds. Soldiers told it to each other in quiet moments before battle. The tale grew with each telling, but the core remained the same. A keeper had risen, the old power had returned, and the elite had been defeated by humans and outcasts. For the first time in centuries, the common people of the Velan Empire began to ask questions. Why were some Velans called defective? Why were the round ones hidden away? Why did the old stories speak of powers that no one had anymore? The elite tried to silence the questions. They burned books, arrested speakers, and denied everything. But the truth is like water. It finds cracks in even the strongest walls, and once it starts flowing, it cannot be stopped. Bomi stood on a stage in the great plaza of the Velan homeworld. It was the same place where emperors had given speeches for thousands of years. The same place where laws had been announced and wars had been declared. Now it was filled with a crowd of over 100,000 Velans. They had not come to see their rulers. They had come to see her. She looked different now than she had a year ago. Her gray skin was no longer dull but seemed to hold a soft inner light, like dawn touching the horizon. She stood straight instead of bent. Her eyes, once afraid to meet anyone's gaze, now looked out at the crowd with calm strength. But she was still round. She was still short. She was still everything that the Empire called ugly, and that was exactly the point. T-Sung watched from the side of the stage. He wore a simple civilian suit instead of his military uniform. He had left the Earth forces 6 months ago. There were more important things to do than patrol trade routes. There was a revolution to protect. Standing with him were the survivors of the Iron Wake. Yiho was there, his missing arm replaced by a simple mechanical one that he refused to upgrade. "It reminds me of what we fought for," he always said. Sungwoo was there, bigger than ever, his loud laugh echoing through any room. Hana was there, her medical bag still at her side, ready to help anyone who needed it. They had become more than soldiers. They had become symbols, the humans who stood with the outcasts, the strangers who saw value where others saw none. Bomi raised her hands, and the crowd grew quiet. "I was born during the Great Famine," she said. Her voice carried across the plaza through speakers, but somehow it still felt personal, like she was talking to each person one at a time. My body stored everything it could to keep me alive. For this, I was called defective. For this, I was hidden away, mocked, and nearly killed. She paused. 100,000 velens hung on her words. But I was not defective, I was a keeper, and I am not alone. From different parts of the crowd, figures began to move forward. They were velens, but not the tall silver ones that everyone was used to seeing. They were short, round, gray-skinned. They were the hidden ones, the thrown-away ones, the forgotten ones. Dozens of them, then hundreds. They walked through the crowd and climbed onto the stage, standing behind Bomi in a wall of gray. The crowd gasped, some screamed, some cried. For thousands of years, Bomi continued, our leaders told us that beauty meant thin bodies and silver skin. They said that anyone who looked different was wrong, broken, less than others. They bred out the keepers because our kind did not fit their idea of perfection, and in doing so, they made our entire species weaker. She spread her arms wide, and light began to flow from her and from the other keepers behind her. It rose into the sky like a fountain, painting the clouds in colors that had not been seen on the Velen homeworld for 1,000 years. This is what we lost, Bomi said. This is the price of vanity. Our ancestors could travel between stars using only the power of their bodies. They could live for centuries. They could create and destroy with a thought. We gave all of that away because we wanted to look pretty. The light faded slowly, but its memory remained burned into every eye that watched. I am not here to tell you what to believe, Bomi said. I am not here to start a war or tear down your government. I am here to tell you the truth and let you decide what to do with it. Your children who are born round and gray are not defective. They are gifts. They are the future that your leaders tried to steal. Protect them. Love them. Let them grow into what they are meant to be. She stepped back and the crowd erupted. Some were cheering. Some were crying. Some were arguing with each other, their old beliefs crashing against new truths. It was messy and loud and confusing, exactly like real change always is. T-Sung joined Bomi at the back of the stage. She looked tired but happy, like someone who had finally set down a weight they had been carrying for too long. That was a good speech, he said. I practiced it 100 times, she admitted. I was so scared I almost ran away this morning. But you did not run. No, I did not. They stood together and watched the chaos in the plaza. It would take years for the Velen society to truly change. There would be resistance, setbacks, maybe even violence. The elite would not give up their power easily. But the seed had been planted. The truth was out. Nothing would be the same again. A small figure pushed through the crowd and climbed onto the stage. It was a young Velen girl, maybe 7 or 8 years old. She was round and gray, with skin that did not shine and hair that did not float. Tears were streaming down her face. She ran straight to Bomi and grabbed her hand. Is it true? The girl asked. Her voice was shaking. Am I really not broken? Bomi knelt down so she was at the girl's level. She took both of the child's hands in her own and held them gently. What is your name, little one? Bomi asked. Sujin, the girl whispered. Sujin, look at me. Bomi waited until the girl's eyes met hers. You are not broken. You have never been broken. Your body is special. It can do things that the silver ones cannot do. They were afraid of that, so they told you lies to make you feel small. But the truth is, you are not small. You are a seed. Sujin looked confused. A seed. Bomi smiled. Yes. Do you know what seeds look like? They are small and round and not very pretty. But inside them is everything needed to grow into something beautiful. Trees, flowers, forests, all of it starts as small round seeds. That is what you are. You are full of possibilities that have not yet opened. Sujin stared at her for a long moment. Then slowly a smile broke through her tears. It was a small smile, uncertain and fragile, but it was there. I like seeds, Sujin said. So do I, Bomi replied. The girl turned and ran back into the crowd, where someone who looked like her mother was waiting. The mother was crying too, but she was also smiling. She hugged her daughter tight. Sung watched the scene and felt something warm in his chest. This was why they had fought. This was what it was all for. Not for glory or power or revenge, but for moments like this. For children who could finally believe they were worth something. A Velen diplomat approached them. He was tall and silver with the cold beauty of the elite, but his eyes were not cold. They were thoughtful, almost uncertain. "Human," he said to Sung, "may I ask you something?" "Go ahead." "That day in the Great Hall when you chose her, when you walked past all those perfect women and picked the gray one in the corner, what did you see? What made you do it?" Sung thought about the question. He thought about his grandmother, working in the fields, saving food for hard times. He thought about the village that survived because of her. He thought about everything that had happened since that day in the hall. "I saw someone who would never let others starve," he said finally. "I saw someone who had suffered but had not become cruel. I saw someone whose body had learned to hold on to things that matter. Where you saw ugliness, I saw preparation. Where you saw defect, I saw design. And I thought to myself, if I ever have to survive something terrible, that is the person I want beside me." The diplomat was silent for a moment. Then he nodded slowly. "We have much to learn from humans," he said. "You see the world so differently." "Maybe not differently," Sung said. "Maybe just more simply. We do not have thousands of years of history telling us what is beautiful and what is not. We just look at what works and what does not." The diplomat bowed slightly and walked away, lost in thought. Bomi took Sung's hand. Her gray skin was warm against his. Above them, the twin suns of the Velen homeworld were beginning to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for everything." "You do not need to thank me," Sung replied. "I just made a choice. You did all the hard work." "No," Bomi shook her head. "You did more than make a choice. You saw me. When no one else in the entire galaxy thought I was worth seeing, you looked at me like I was a person, like I mattered. That is not a small thing. That is everything." Sung smiled and squeezed her hand. "Then I guess we saved each other." They stood together as the suns went down and the stars came out. Somewhere in the crowd, Sujin was telling her mother about seeds. Somewhere on distant worlds, other gray children were hearing the news and feeling hope for the first time. Somewhere in the universe, things were changing, slowly but surely, because one human soldier had refused to accept what everyone told him was true. He had chosen the fat one, and in doing so he had changed everything. Not with weapons, not with power, but with the simple act of seeing value where others saw none. That was the cause, that had always been the cause. And it was only the beginning.